Have you ever asked yourself the question, why is this happening to me again? You're about to receive an exciting set of practical tools with which to take charge of and change your life. It's been said that the challenge of life consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in developing new eyes. In this workshop, you will experience a new perspective on life. This unique correlation of information provides a foundation for empowerment and life mastery. Dr. Michael Ryce is internationally known as an author and lecturer. He's also known for his work in and unique contribution to world peace through an understanding of the principles of gaining inner peace. In this 4-hour workshop, Dr. Ryce will present broad perspectives on achieving physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. I'm sure you will enjoy and benefit greatly from Why Is This Happening to Me Again?
Welcome to Why Is This Happening to Me Again? We're about to get into a workshop that's based on a question that a lot of people have asked themselves. How many of us have found ourselves in that posture? Asking the question, why? The information that we're going to present to you today and in the next 4 hours is not information that is meant to make you whole. It's not meant to complete you. The offering of this information comes from a place where we understand that you are already whole and total. Most often we find ourselves in a position of looking and wondering where the answer is. Looking out there for what it is that will make us whole. When the real fact is that what you are looking for is what is looking. And in fact, the main thing that most of us need to do, instead of find something out there, is to come back within ourselves and let go of what doesn't belong there. Now, the workshop that we're going to do originally was put together to be a 2-week workshop. And it was kind of difficult to get people to sit still for 2 weeks, so I've cut it down to about 4 hours. And I'm going to ask you to listen fast. The goal is not going to be to teach you the material that we're going to present in the first 3 hours. Actually, the material I'm going to present is just going to be meant to set a stage that will make sense of the last hour that we're going to cover, because the tools and the material we're going to present will seem to be exactly opposite to what you think will change your life, to what you think will work. We'll get into the reasons for that as we move along, but if you find yourself, as we're presenting the information, getting into a kind of an information overload, let go of the need to understand what I'm saying. Let go of the need to even remember anything that I've said. The goal is going to be to provide a correlation of information with which to make sense out of the worksheet, the solution portion of the workshop. Have you ever found yourself in the position of looking at the world, and especially with what's going on in the world today, being able to embrace the whole world and wanting to say, you know, I love the world, I love humanity, it's the people that bother me? Well, haven't we all been in that position? And there's a reason for that. And the reason for us looking out in the world and seeing the problems out there is a very important principle that we're going to get into today. The principle is called blockage of personal error. How many times have we found ourselves toe-to-toe with someone, proclaiming our perfection and our innocence, telling them what's wrong with them, as they stand toe-to-toe to us, proclaiming their innocence and saying the same. This was your mistake. Why is it so easy to see their errors, and yet we can't see our own? They're invisible to us. And of course, on the other hand, why is it that they can't see what they've done that's wrong? It's so clear to us what they've done. But we're going to work toward a tool with which to undo that situation, with which to reverse blockage of personal error. So the goal of the workshop is going to be the tool, not understanding what leads up to the tool. That which leads up to it is going to set the stage. The tool itself is where the work is done. Now, we're going to cover several different disciplines. We're going to talk about science, about psychology, about theology, about psychiatry. And we're going to bring in some ancient languages and some ancient cultural perspectives. And in doing so, we hope to, by the end of the third part of the workshop, have you in a mindset, have you being able to see things differently, perhaps, than you now view the world. And in being able to see differently, once you're offered a tool with which to maintain that different way of seeing, I hope to inspire you to use it, to put the tool to work in your life. Now, the work is not going to happen here in the workshop. It's not going to happen as you sit in our audience. It's not going to happen if you're sitting at home watching this video. Where it's going to happen is when you take the tool back out into your life and apply it. Our goal is going to be to get you to be willing to apply the tool. Have you ever been to a workshop where you went and you'd heard about how wonderful the workshop was and how great the information was, and you got there and it was really exciting and it really turned you on, and you knew when you came out of that workshop your life was going to change? And you went home that night just singing a song because you knew it was going to change, and you went to bed that night and the next day you told everyone how much your life was going to change? And you went to bed that night knowing that your life was going to change, and you got up the next morning hoping that your life would change? And that night you went to bed wondering why your life hadn't changed? Well, this workshop's going to be the same, unless you apply the tool that we're going to offer you. When you think about the complexity of the information that we hold in our mind, you could sit in front of someone speaking wonderful words for hours, days, weeks, and it would just be the smallest bit of information compared to the massive complex of information that you hold within you. And so once that new bit of information that may be exciting dies away and is lost, and that just takes a matter of hours or a few days, then the tendency for it to be an impetus to change your life disappears. The continuous application of a tool with which to change your mind is what will bring about real changes in your life. And if you will use the tool as we're going to offer it and suggest that you use it, inside of 60 days, you won't know that you're living the same life. So remember that the goal is going to be to get to the worksheet portion, the solution portion of the workshop. The information is just a way of leading up to it. Now, in our correlating, we're going to bring in all of these different disciplines, and to show you the power of correlating the disciplines, there's a neat little story that talks about the 5 blind men that were sent out to investigate an elephant. Now, these 5 blind men went out, and sure enough, they investigated the elephant. And as they did, one of the blind men found this round, solid type thing, something like a tree trunk. And it had kind of these things that he identified as toenails on it. And from his experience, he knew what an elephant was. And then, of course, there was another fellow who got up on the back of the elephant. And from the back of the elephant, he knew that an elephant was a slightly rounded but large sort of flat surface. Another one of those blind men found the trunk of the elephant, and he knew that an elephant was kind of this long, slippery, kind of slobbery thing. And then, of course, there was the fellow who found the ropey part of the elephant that didn't smell very good, and we know what part he found. Well, each of them went back and told the truth about their experience of the elephant. But did any of them know what an elephant was? No. As long as we have limited perception, we will not be able to view the whole of life and understand what it means. So I'm going to draw on these different disciplines in order to get different explanations of those who've gone out and investigated the elephant. Man has a tendency to view through limited perspectives. In fact, the mind is a prism through which we view life. And if there are any limitations held within that prism, the fact is we won't be able to view life wholly, totally. And so I'm going to draw on these different disciplines in an attempt to get a broader view, a broader perspective than any one of those disciplines might give you. Oftentimes, when I talk about these different disciplines, I run into people who've been offended by one discipline or another. And they tend to invalidate the whole discipline because of that offense. And what I'm going to ask you to do, because only an open mind can see and contain the truth, I'm going to ask you to open your mind and consider each of these disciplines. And if you have a discussion, an argument with any of the disciplines, as it comes up in your mind, kind of let it go for the moment. And take a look at the information we're going to present, and let's see how it fits. What we're going to find ultimately is that each of the disciplines are chasing the same elephant. Oh, they all have different names. Psychology calls it the unconscious. Psychiatry calls it the unconscious or the subconscious. The theologies call it spirit or God. The scientists call it energy. Now, if we take away the descriptive word, the word they've used to represent what it is they're searching for, we'll find that each of those disciplines is looking for exactly the same thing, an unknowable, unfathomable, omnipresent power that is known only by the effects it creates. We don't know energy directly. If we're in the sciences, we know it by the effects it creates. We don't know the unconscious, as psychiatry talks about it, only by the effects it creates. We don't know God except by the effects created. And in each case, if we can correlate these disciplines, we're going to find that they interlock perfectly, and rather than being separating, they're unifying. They tend to bring in more of an understanding, more of a grasp of what each of those disciplines is about. It is only in our ego selves, the part that wants to create separation, the part that says, I've got it and nobody else has. Imagine those 5 wise men who went out and got a group of followers. And imagine the followers going to war over who was going to rule, who had the true answer about what an elephant was. And the fact is, none of them had it. When we recognize and start to look toward each of those disciplines and fit them in place properly, we'll find that they will each support us being connected with whatever that something is and being more in tune with life, finding out more of what life is about. We tend not to be able to view the errors that we have made because we hold to one thought system or another. We refuse to allow ourselves to make changes. During this workshop, I'm going to ask you to take a different view and consider making some changes. If you sat in a place and refused to move, chances are you don't know the truth, and you never will. But if you can open your being to a greater understanding, and the major tool for opening our being to that greater understanding is called, and it's something that doesn't have a very good reputation. And it's not spoken about in a lot of circles in a very constructive way. It's called forgiveness. Now, most of us have a view of forgiveness that says, there's somebody out there that did it to me. Think about the current conflict in your life. Who is it in that conflict that you know needs to change? It's them, isn't it? Well, think about that person for a moment. Are you saying somebody out there did it to me? Well, if you're in the position of wanting to forgive them for what they've done, you will actually reinforce the error. And though you may walk away from them, though you may separate from them, you will simply find someone else to bring in to do exactly the same thing to you. Again. Why is that? The fact is, and probably one of the greatest atrocities that has ever been done to mankind, is that we are by nature creative beings. As creative beings, we set up our lives. And until we understand how it is that we set up our lives, we're not going to be able to bring about any changes. The real meaning of forgiveness, if you go back into the original language where we got the meaning of forgiveness in the first place, it literally means, in Aramaic, to forgive means to cancel or to let loose, literally to untie. So rather than forgiving them for what they've done, it means that this is a participatory world we live in. Nothing can happen to us without us taking part. And as we recognize our participation, the act of forgiveness is the act whereby we go within ourselves and cancel, let loose, or untie those energies with which we have set up what's happening in our lives. Now, we're going to get into the dynamics of that from several different perspectives in order that we can view it more wholly, more completely, and understand the truth of who we are. Blockage of personal error is what prevents us from seeing that. And as I think about, I love humanity, but it's the people that bother me. There's a cute cartoon, a Peanuts cartoon, where Lucy comes into the room where Charlie Brown is sitting and says to Charlie, "I hate the whole world. I hate everybody." And Charlie turns around and replies, "But I thought you had inner peace." And she says, "I do, but I still have outer obnoxiousness." How many of us have found ourselves with outer obnoxiousness? And why is it that we can't see our part in it? When we come to understand how the mind operates, and I'm just going to do a simple diagram on the board that shows parts of who we are, the body, with its function called the mind, and we'll talk more about that later. We'll find that there's a specific part of the mind that governs what we're able to see. If we were to take you into the laboratory and hook you up to electrodes, in a time period where on a conscious level you could see in computer language a maximum of 9 pieces of information, 9 bits of information, in that same time period on an unconscious level, that is, measurable brain cell firings, and each firing would represent a single piece of information potentially available on the conscious level. In that same time frame, we'll find 10,000 brain cells firing off. And so we get to see this small fragment of what it is that's actually happening in the world when we look through our conscious minds. How many of us have known that we're only seeing this little tiny bit of what's actually happening in our lives? And how many of us know how to take control of which 9 bits of information you get to see? Remember standing toe-to-toe with that person, each of you claiming your perfection, telling the other what was wrong with them? Have you ever been in a position where you've wondered if they were talking about the same situation as you were? You have, eh? Why is that? How is that possible? Were they lying to you? And at the same time, when they said, "But you're not even talking about the same thing," were you lying to them? No. You were just seeing a different 9 bits of information. And until you learn to take charge of which 9 bits of information you see, the mind cannot give you accurate information about life. It can only give you information as governed by a part of the mind called the judgment system. Now, I like to call the judgment system the JS. The JS, the judgment system, is the part of the mind that controls which information you get to see on a conscious level. The fact is, when we experience something going on in life through our minds, what we're seeing is our mind's information about the event. We never see the event itself. An event happens out here. Do you see the event? No. The event causes brain cells to fire within you, and the brain cells that fire give you information about the event. Now start to think about this in the context of our title. Why is this happening to me again? Do you think that until you learn to take charge of what evidence you get to see, you might keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, ad nauseum? Yes. And it's not the event we're perceiving at all. It's our mind's interpretation or information about the event. And the judgment system determines what that information is. The fact is that the mind is an evidential device. When we're looking at life through our minds, what we get to see is our mind's evidence about what's happening. And we're only seeing some small pieces of evidence at that. The judgment system, you could almost imagine, is like a series of shapes, of openings. We've all seen the child's toy. It usually comes in the form of a mailbox. And it's got several openings in it. There's a round hole and a square one and a star-shaped one. And in each case, the only block that will fit into those openings is the block that is shaped like the opening. Nothing else will go through. So we could almost imagine the judgment system functioning something like that. Although they're not physiological openings, they're energy openings. They're shaped by the energies we hold within our mind in the form of judgments, the judgment system. Whatever judgments we hold form these openings in the mind. So at any given time, you could imagine that there are 9 shapes, so to speak, and the information that comes through to the conscious level must match those openings. Anything that fires in a brain cell that does not match cannot get through one of the openings. And if it's close enough that it can squeeze through, it's going to be altered or reformed by the opening that it moves through. Example, let's imagine we've got someone who just went out into the garden and picked a beautiful ripe red, the first organic tomato off the vine. Comes running into the house all excited, this wonderful odoriferous tomato, and yells, "I just picked the first tomato and it's beautiful. Would you like it?" To you, who are out in the back room. You go to the door to open the door and gee, the lock won't open, it's stuck. And you say, "Yes, I'd love it, I'm really hungry, but I can't get the door open." Tell you what, how about passing it through the keyhole? I'll get it on the other side. And yes, you would get a tomato on the other side, but it wouldn't quite be the same, would it? And in precisely the same fashion, when an event fires a piece of information in brain cells, that piece of information, as it tries to get to the conscious level, will be either inhibited or altered if it doesn't match one of these openings. In excess of 90% of brain chemistry, is tied up in inhibiting brain cell function, in stopping information from coming to the conscious level. And so the judgment system, according to what it is we hold in that system, determines what evidence we get to see through our minds. And if our judgments about life are not accurate, then the evidence we get to see about life is not accurate. And if you're standing toe-to-toe with someone in an argument, you can bet that neither of you are accurate about what the truth is in what just happened. So we need to learn how to take charge of this judgment system. And forgiveness, being able to go within ourselves and cancel or let loose of some of these energies, is the tool with which we go in and reshape the judgment system so that we can start to get accurate evidence about life. Now, what is at the root of the JS? At the root of the judgment system, the JS, is our belief system. All the beliefs that we've acquired, all of the beliefs that we've inherited, and yes, we can actually inherit beliefs. Now, some people say, no, wait a minute, Michael, now that's a little much. How could you inherit a belief? Well, when you get down to it in the laboratory, mind energy is a thing that can now be measured. A gentleman named Marcel Vogel, a 23-year senior scientist from IBM, has developed the instrumentation with which to take a picture of the high energy wave and particle that leaves the mind when we think the thought. So there's a real energy there. And every thought that we think is literally being impressed throughout our whole structure and registered there. Now we all accept that, well, of course you inherit the color of your eyes. But what is the color of your eyes but a vibration, but an energy impressed in our genetic structure? The color of our hair, the color of our skin. All of those things are encoded in an energy system that produces a body like whatever is held in the system. Well, we inherit our beliefs. In fact, every thought that you think is literally altering your genetic structure. Is being added to it, or you can also remove from it and mute some of the genes that we have overlaid or superimposed upon that which is already perfect. You recall we started out with a statement, we're not here to make you perfect. It's already there. What you need to do is uncover it and bring it into expression here. That's the job that lies before each of us. So our beliefs as inherited, as acquired, as we went through life and we were taught by our siblings, taught by our peers, taught by our parents, our relatives, taught by our religious leaders, our schools, the television set. What kind of forming took place of that mind? And are we ready to wake up and consciously take charge of the way that mind was formed? You might recall a statement that was made, do not be molded by the world. If we're molded by what is happening in the external world, then we will take on all of the judgments and all of the beliefs of the world, and then we'll be limited to them. Let's imagine that each belief is like a little coloring. Remember they said we see as though through a glass darkly? Someone who holds judgments and beliefs about life that are inaccurate is like that person who goes around with a set of colored glasses. And they look at life and we say, well, I can see what life is about, and you know, it just happens to have this sort of way about it all the time. It kind of has this hue, this coloring about it. And certainly I can see you